welcome to the May 15th meeting of the Public Art Commission in the city of Palo Alto. We have some new commissioners with us tonight, so we're going through this for the first time with all of them, so this will be fun. First thing we do is roll call. So I will start. Commissioner Migdal, Jim.
Present.
And Commissioner Silverstein. I didn't ask that part. Steen. See, I knew I was going to blow it.
Present.
All right, great. And then, of course, Commissioner Toback.
Present.
Sorry, I'm sharing. Yes. And then Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Great. And then I know we don't have Commissioner Amanda Beard-Ross tonight, although she was still trying to make arrangements to get here. And Vice Chair Miyagi also not here. But with us are the staff from the Public Art Program, Nadia Chuprina, thank you for coming, and Elise DeMarzo, of course. Always great to have the both of you organizing us. Okay, so do we have any agenda changes, requests, or deletions? Okay, we're all good to go on that. That's great. So we have oral communications next, and sometimes we don't have these. I was thinking that we might have one tonight, but we don't, I don't have a speaker card, so at this point, we're going to proceed. There's really only one time in the meeting when public can speak without being on the agenda, and that's now, and they would give a speaker card in advance, and we don't have that, so then we get to move on. So we will start with our first item of approval of the minutes. So hopefully everybody had a chance to look at the April 17th meeting minutes. I guess I'm just being slow here because I'm thinking if they weren't here, they wouldn't probably weigh in on that. So are we going to just have a mini kind of second and approval?
Well, this gets tricky because you still have to have a majority of the body to approve the minutes. So you would have to have 4 commissioners approve the minutes.
But they have to have been part of it, wouldn't they? Or I would think. And so probably we should table it till the next time because then we would have.
That's probably the easiest way to handle it.
Yeah. And so hopefully if you read through them, you saw that indeed we had a robust meeting last month. And we're going to talk about the public art master plan. So there's other things that you'll see touched again from last month. So I'm just going to table that whole thing, and we're going to bring that back to next meeting. How about that? Mm-hmm. Okay. We are just whipping along here in our meeting. All right, so this is the fun part, the financial report from Elise.
Okay, so if you'll look at the CIP budget for the newer commissioners, it's the larger budget, the full page. The 2 new items under actual costs are the stipends for the City Hall new media art in the total of $5,000. And the Anthony DiCenza second payment was made to him since the last meeting. So those are the 2 new items up there. And actually, those are the only 2 new items on the CIP. Are there any other questions on the CIP before we move on to maintenance?
No, but I was just realizing I didn't really study this. Was it in our attachments or was it not? Because I just didn't, I would just give us a second maybe to review it, and I imagine people might have questions. Does it make sense to just kind of run through it, or maybe for the new commissioners in terms of how we look at the spreadsheet? Would you take 2 minutes to do that?
I certainly can. So the CIP funds, if you look at the carry forward, which includes both funds that are officially encumbered under a contract or those that are unencumbered, then it shows underneath that the FY14 adopted budget of $50,000. Which is traditionally allocated to the public art program for the Commission of Artwork, which leaves us with that current budget. Then the actual cost we tend to list for that particular fiscal year. So when we move into the new fiscal year, that will zero out, and we will start the list anew with items that come out of that fiscal year. So you see the subtotal of the actual cost for this fiscal year so far are $77,693. And then commitments under a placeholder, Sabo, Verlander, Anthony, those items are all committed under contract and encumbered. So those are committed to those destinations. And then the PAC approved future budget, those are items that the commission has allocated, but they have not been officially been encumbered in a contract. And so those funds are certainly something that the commission can discuss at the upcoming retreat when they go over the priorities for the next year and have a discussion if those allocations are still appropriate. So that, after all of that is backed out, the available remaining budget in the CIP is $2,603.24.
Which I would just add, because we're sort of within this, it's this meeting and then, another 30 days, and then we're out of the fiscal year. So we're doing our best to whittle down our funds through this fiscal year, because we can carry it forward, but we have other ideas too for future. So anyway, thank you. That was really helpful, I think, as a new commissioner, to just understand how it's put together and what each bucket is. I think it took me a couple months of catching on and listening. Okay, any other questions or anything on that topic before she moves to the maintenance budget? Nobody? Good?
Okay, so the maintenance budget, which is on a separate page, there are a few new items on there. So the actuals are listed above, and the new items there are the caution tape for the concrete pads for $58, the base for Universal Woman, and the base for Skyhook, each at $1,900 apiece. So the remaining balance is $5,925. And then we have these items below that are in process, so they haven't been encumbered yet or under contract yet. The one new item on there is the wild bear urgent conservation. We had one piece that was vandalized that we're addressing now. And so that will cost $750, and it will likely be moved up to actuals by the next meeting, along with several of these other items. So those are the new items.
Yeah, I know. So new, Elise told me that. These are at one of the parks, and we just, what was that, October or September when it? October, when we just had their unveiling after their installation. So it wasn't long before something had maybe not been as securely welded as we had thought, so needed to be repaired. I just had one question. So the base for Universal Woman and base for Skyhook, so you've committed, right? Or because you got the estimates for those? But
They're poured.
They are poured?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I saw that I thought we had to relocate the Universal Woman, and so you found a new spot, and that's all done. Maybe I missed it.
Yes, it was just within the courtyard. We had to shift the placement slightly.
Okay, great.
But the bases are poured, so the concrete is curing now.
Terrific.
And we're arranging for the final installation, hopefully May 30th, for both of those artworks.
Oh, great. Okay, that's good. And then the story, or however you would say that, annual subscription and the signage, I know we had talked about that as a potential project, and I see it as an estimate. So you got an estimate, and then is it something that we will review or discuss? Because somewhere in my brain, I remembered coming across another one that I thought we should look at, or it seemed like it was as good at, if not better. So I just was thinking about that, and that triggered it for me. Is this something that we've already committed or not committed, or what's the status?
It's not under contract, which is why it's on pending project estimates. And so we are exploring some other options. We don't want to rush into that commitment this
fiscal.
Too soon in this fiscal year. We need to leave enough in maintenance in case there is some other emergency to be able to address something. So that is something that may happen right at the end of the fiscal year if we determine that that is indeed the way to go.
Okay, so this is, just for others' background, so this is a kind of a online web-based tool that actually walks us through collection pieces, doesn't it? Or it's a QR code back, it's sort of the background, or whatever you would say, backbone to.
It does have a QR code. It's an app on your phone. It's a QR code where you can then pull up information on each of the artworks, whether it's videos or write-ups or interviews with the artist, and you can change that content without having to change the QR code. Additionally, it will let you know what other artworks are nearby. So you can open the app and then see what artworks are in the vicinity. So if you wanted to take a little walking tour or something, you could.
And so I'm thinking about what you just said relative to, so this maintenance budget is a use it or lose it budget. So we have to try to spend up as much as we can in this year for important maintenance items. And you would consider this a maintenance item as opposed to a new project that we would take on the new
Well, it goes along with the signage, because we do have a number of pieces that don't have any information, don't have signage on them currently, because previously, we had ordered bronze signage plaques that are rather dated and don't have sufficient information. So this is an effort to do that outreach and offer more information at the site of the piece.
So it's a sort of electronic sign. I mean, that would be one way
Well,
of
and
saying it.
there's a physical sign at the site too.
Right, but if that's bronze and it has to have a QR code, then that's not gonna, I mean,
This would replace it. So they print aluminum signage that goes at the site that we can design.
okay, and that's part of that cost in that estimate. Okay, so what you're saying is that this is a kind of an item that doesn't need commission approval because we'll have one more meeting before the end of the fiscal year. So would it be something we would talk about next time, or is this something at your discretion?
On the maintenance budget, any item over $3,000 needs to come for commission approval.
Okay, so but these are
Other
under,
that is under staff.
so you would
staff would
potentially do
report
it
out.
as a part of the curating of the collections,
Mhm.
so to speak. Okay.
And so, and does that mean that going forward, just for look and feel, that we'll use them for other projects when we have?
That would be the intent, that would replace the signage on an ongoing basis so that there's more information available to the public, and it's a more updated look and feel to that signage.
And then that signage for future projects will be part of the project budget so the sign budget would go into the total project budget, not under maintenance. Is that right?
Going
Like-
forward, new project.
New
Likely-
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
The signage is not very expensive.
Yeah.
At
No,
all,
I'm just wondering
so-
how we're gonna handle it going forward. Like, when we are gonna do projects, are we gonna put signage into the,
Project cost, it seems
Yeah.
like it should be.
or?
We can, that's
it doesn't
fine.
matter.
It's such a
You're not
small
afraid
amount,
it's
it's not.
Yeah,
I hear you.
exactly. I'm just
I hear
thinking logistically, like, what to expect.
So if effectively, this pending project estimates, you will, because you'll try to do all of those within this next 40 days or whatever, right? Yeah, okay. I know, these guys have lots on their plate, they juggle a lot of balls, so I'm just trying to keep track of what all is priority for this few weeks. Okay, so are there any questions on maintenance further than the ones that I've already asked? Okay. All right. I think we can move on, right, to Elise's staff report. Is that
Staff comments?
staff comments?
Sure. First item is the partner presentation. So partner presentations occur several times a year to the city council and are scheduled to last approximately 7 minutes. So they're very brief. Matthew Tews, Executive Director of the Arts Programs for Stanford, made a brief partner presentation to the city council on Monday, May 12th, in which he briefly highlighted the art programming at Stanford and the partnership with the city of Palo Alto to bring Ala Ebtekar's temporary public art installation to the University Avenue tunnels. The council had the opportunity to ask questions of Tews and the public art staff before resuming with their regular agenda.
What date was that? Was that just this
Monday.
past Monday?
Monday night. The second item is the Coverly Artist Studio Program. Now through July 1st, the City of Palo Alto is accepting applications from artists, makers, and other creative individuals who desire their own studio workspace. If you have we've updated the program and invite you to apply. If you're interested in a collaborative or individual workspace that will advance your creative work, whether as a painter, printmaker, new media artist, public artist, poet, graphic novelist, or other arts discipline, please go to the City of Palo Alto website under Community Services and look for the Coverly Artist Studio Program tab. And the third item is that the City Council selected 3 fantastic new public art commissioners. And so that leads us to our special order of the day. So I'll turn that over to Chair Kavanaugh.
Okay, so this is the part where you weren't given too much notice to know that we're going to ask you to speak a little bit about yourself, and it might be easier if I tell you that you can kind of regurgitate what you did in your application interview in front of the city council, so it makes you feel less on the spot. But welcome to the 3 of you. We're excited to have you. We will hopefully have a full group soon so that you can meet everybody. But in the meantime, please, let's start with Naya. How about?
So I'm Nia Taylor, and I grew up here in Palo Alto, born and raised, and I'm happy to be on this wonderful art committee, the Public Art Commission. I love art. I'm an artist, an educator, teacher. I work with kids, making them excited and giving them the excitement that I have for art and the creative arts, and so I'm really excited to bring wonderful art to the city of Palo Alto because I think there's so much the city has to offer, and I think that public art is a wonderful way of making the city very vibrant and making any city vibrant and giving people the opportunity to have conversation and really be happy where they are, whether it's living or working. And so I'm really proud to be here as a public art commissioner.
And I was going to say, I understand that do you have a store here in downtown Palo Alto? Because this is, twice I've heard this, but I want to hear it straight from you.
Sure. So yes, I do run with another woman an art studio for children called C is for Craft at Bryant Street, 540 Bryant Street to be exact. And we sell lots of different art products and books to inspire creativity, but then we also have an art studio that kids can come in and do art and just explore and create and have fun, make a big mess, and go home happy. And then we also do birthday parties and special events as well. And then I also, in the past, actually, I worked for the Art Foundation, the Palo Alto Art Center Foundation, to be exact, where I worked with Cultural Kaleidoscope. So I'm fairly familiar with the city and the art that it has to offer, both in terms of the public scope, like the Public Art Commission, but also within education. And that's how I know Elise, actually. So
Terrific. Welcome. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Should we turn to you, Dara?
I'm Dara Olmsted Silverstein, and I have only lived here for 2.5 years, so much less time than Nia. I lived in Boston and Cambridge and Somerville, over by Boston for the past 15 years. And I don't consider myself an artist, but I really like art, especially public art. And that's how I met Elise. I called her with a project I was thinking of doing. And some of my past experience, actually, I'm kind of excited about our first mural we're going to talk about because I did work for a watershed association. I did my thesis on stormwater, so very appropriate. And I did electric boxes with students from Tufts, freshmen, that depicted the river, animals from the river, next to the river, and also did my own box right before we moved. That was thread because I like to sew, and I did a sock monkey installation, one at Harvard with some students that I taught to sew sock monkeys, and one at the European Cobblery. And then in Somerville, it was great because it's second most artists per capita. So I did open studios. I forgot to talk about this last time, but I did open studios. My husband's a photographer, and I do silk screen and then monkeys. And and so we participated in a lot of art stuff. So I'm more of an admirer, I think. And I currently work at Stanford. I run the Sustainable Food Program. That's part of residential and dining enterprises. So I'm very interested in food and the environment. My whole career is sustainability related, and how that ties into art. Sort of like the twig sculptures in front of the art center is like the perfect example of that. Thank you.
And indeed, we're going to even have a little bit more on art and green later. Yeah, and innovation. It is a nice coincidence, exactly. Right, and so we'll have Jim give a few minutes on yourself.
My name is Jim Migdal, and I've been a Palo Alto resident since 2007 when I moved here with my family from San Francisco. I grew up in Chicago, and my mom was a sculptor and has done public art for a long time, and I've been a kind of informal advisor for her over the years and have help with negotiations with different municipalities and universities, so I have sort of the perspective of the artist, at least from the business side, about what it means to have your art displayed. And one of the main reasons I was interested in serving on the commission was to understand how we can best leverage different mobile and mapping technologies to help people discover the art that's around them. And story is one I think is interesting. I think there's a bunch of different alternatives that would be fun to explore and to see what you can do at relatively low cost that would raise the level of enrichment and understanding as we go. Oh, in my background, I've worked in tech most of my career, most recently at Facebook, where I did business development, negotiating partnerships with other tech companies that would build on Facebook platform or to bring technology to Facebook. I left a few years ago and have been doing some informal advising and investing since then.
Great. So it's good that we have a local startup app guy on our commission, because that would be a hole we need filled. We've now officially filled it. Thank you to the city council. That's perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you and welcome to all of you. And we do have one action item on our agenda for the evening, and so that's the time where we actually get to vote on something. So that'll be your big move for the night, and then we'll have a lot more talking. So with that, we wanted to look at the update on the mural designs by Martin Webb.
So you, hopefully you've had a chance to look over the staff report in your packet, but I'll run through a brief background, because I know for several of you, you're coming in the middle of this process. So the project originally came along combining the municipal percent for art for two adjacent sites, for the water quality control plant and for the household hazardous waste facility. It's primarily a landscaping project, and so the budgets were rather small, so we decided to combine the budgets for both of them. The combined budget was $12,000. In January 2013, we put out a call for qualifications for artists who might be interested in creating an artwork at the site. There were a number of sites that were available for artists to propose artwork. A panel of stakeholders, artists, and public art commissioners convened to select 5 artists to create site-specific proposals. Martin Webb was one of those artists, and he proposed 2 concepts, one for the entryway, and he also had proposed a mural on the water tank. However, the current available funds would only cover one or the other concept. So as you look at the slide that Nadia has up, just to orient you, because some of you may not know where the water quality control plant and household hazardous waste facilities are, if you go down Embarcadero Road toward the Baylands and just opposite the golf course, you take a right on Embarcadero Way, and as you get toward the end of that street, where the circle that's lower in the screen is, you would turn left to enter the water quality control plant, and there is a new driveway that is adjacent to that to enter the new household hazardous waste. It's more of an open covered facility. And so that's the entryway. So the group decided to go with that proposal. The other larger circle is the recycled water tank, which is farther inside the water quality control plant. And so because this was combined funds, they determined it made more sense to fund the artwork that would be visible to people going to both facilities. So in this slide, you'll see the entrance to the water quality control plant, and the base for Martin Webb's piece essentially replaces where that older sign is that is circled. And Nadia, if you'll please go to the next slide. So this is the artwork that has been fabricated, that is scheduled to go in at the entrance to the water quality control plant. And part of what was important about this call to artists is not only having something at the end of that drive that reflected what was taking place both in the water quality control plant and the household hazardous waste facility, but to reflect the Baylands and the beautiful natural environment that surrounds them, that is absolutely linked with the work of those facilities. And so this is the project he came up with at that time, and the panel had hoped that additional funds might be found to also do the mural, but at the time they were not. There were no extra funds. So we just went with this first one. Then last month I was notified by the staff at the Water Quality Control Plant that additional funds were found to commission a mural. So in April, Public Art staff, Water Quality Control Plant staff, and Martin Webb met to discuss the audience programming and purpose of the artwork on the tank. And this is his original conceptual design at the time he submitted the first proposal. What they've done at this water tank, which previously there was no seating around it. It was the side of a water tank, and it did have a student mural on the side of it, which they decided to remove. But what they're building now is this trellis with seating, and so essentially it'll become an outdoor classroom and a setting for a lot of their educational programs on the site. And so it was really important to the staff, the feedback that we got. It was really important to the staff to understand the audience, that this was a place for education, and that many of the elements of what they handle and the purpose of that facility and the people behind that facility. It was really important to humanize what it is they do, that you walk in and you see these large tanks and these buildings and equipment, but they're very dedicated people, and many of them who work in this facility day after day to protect the Baylands environment and provide clean, fresh water. So after that meeting, Martin came back with this revised sketch drawing, which is very similar and ties in to the outer one, but it does show a couple of the workers there, and you see some of the pipes and the underground elements there. And part of that came up because the exterior of the tank actually does have a pipe that runs along the outside, which created an interesting design challenge for him, but I think he has negotiated that well. So this is in black and white, but it would be in similar color scheme to the artwork that's on at the entrance to the facility. So just for clarification, this is not a request to the commission for additional funding. The funding is coming from elsewhere, but it is a request to approve the design so that Webb can move ahead in the next few weeks with planning and painting the mural, because the rest of the construction is in fact nearing completion. And so the idea is that they would like to have the mural in place when the trellis and everything is completed and they resume giving classes in that outdoor space. And that's it.
Great. I will open it up for any kind of discussion or questions that anyone has. I was going to remark that it was just one of these crazy coincidences that I had heard that my daughter's school will go to this place for a outing in 4th or 5th grade or something. That's a big thing. So maybe, anyway, so I thought, all better that they have a little spot for the kids to sit when they have their learning about the wastewater treatment. Anyway, I won't take up all the time since I've done so much talking. Does anybody have any questions on it or any discussion? Open it up.
In terms of the students that are there, is it a regular part of the curriculum for elementary school students at each of the different Palo Alto elementary schools to go and have an education session, or is it middle school? Or, do you know?
It's all different age groups who go, and it's not just the schools. There are lots of independent groups and like Girl Scout troops and environmental groups who go in, who want to learn about the work that takes place there and tour the facility. So it is a broad spectrum of age groups and audience that would visit that site.
And as a parent in the school district, I think that's, by just the eye look that I got from Elise, it doesn't sound like that's standard, because maybe, did your kids not go there?
Mine didn't.
Okay, so I'm thinking it might be, it's not necessarily a kind of a standard thing, but if you have someone who's motivated, or there's, as you say, like some sort
Teacher discretion.
Exactly, field trip plan or what have you. But anyway, that was my little added.
I just had one question, sorry, about, is there going to be text in the front? Sign it? Or
Yes, there will be signage at the site identifying the plaque, and there's also some informational signage that will be incorporated along the side of the trellis that the Water Quality Control Plant's putting in. But we will have something identifying the artwork and the mural.
And will it say the name of the water plant, like in the original?
There is,
Entrance,
at the entrance?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, so there is new signage for both the hazardous waste facility and for the water quality control plant that will be installed.
He revise anything from the initial design? Is there any, because I remember I was in the selection panel for that.
You can see the original design was what we first showed here.
Uh-huh. And then,
And so the revised has some of the people, and it's lightened up a little bit, and the pipes and everything below.
oh, I I see, okay. It was a little hard to tell because of the
So that
shading.
was really just incorporating some of the input that he had received from the staff there and the stakeholders there.
And was there any additional thought to have it go all the way around, or are they just going to keep it in the trellis?
There's not nearly enough funding to do that. I mean, as is, we're
Okay.
getting a lot more mural for that budget amount, so.
Yeah, no, it's great that
And
it's
the
happening.
trellis itself provides a natural framework, so actually breaking through that wouldn't necessarily make sense and it wouldn't be very visible.
I have a quick question. Did the revised design go back to the educators who do the programming there to,
That was who we met with.
okay, so
On
they looked
site.
at the final? Because I was just wondering about like the birds that are at bottom on the left, they're on the bottom, and they kind of look underground. Like I feel like that bottom part's is the underground, the pipes and so the birds just look like they're flying underground, which seemed a little weird. That would be my only comment. And as long as all the piping and everything is educationally correct, so, I used to work at the aquarium, so if you're doing something and you're educating, making sure it's actually right, so you don't have to backtrack. Well, that's not how the pipes work, or
This has been,
thoroughly vetted.
their
yeah.
staff has
Yeah.
looked at it. It's, yes.
I guess as I'm reading this and looking at the image, I just assumed the exposed wall meant that we're still seeing the concrete base of the structure. And then the mural, so the birds, for example, would be painted over the top. So I didn't read it in the same way maybe that Dara did, thinking that it's an overlay, so it's like they would be flying around.
Yeah. Oh, I was just
I
thinking-
hear what you're saying. It's a good perspective.
Yeah, because the pipes are
Yeah,
underground.
that one.
I thought it was underground, and then the people become the above ground. That's all.
Okay. Well, at this stage, if there are any other questions or comments, Jim?
Just a simple one. What are the dimensions? How big is the piece?
The water tank is large.
The water tank is large. I'm trying to remember what the exact dimensions of the artwork are, but it's something along the lines of, 6 feet tall and 15 to 20 feet wide, or something along those lines.
I was guessing it was even a little bit
Taller,
wider.
right?
Yeah,
Or-
well, both, but you've been to the meetings and I haven't, so, and those tanks are big. Okay, well, I think this is a nice addition to our wastewater and hazardous facilities, and so I think I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the art as we see it in the mural, in the revised mural.
I second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't hear anybody not say aye, so I think we've sailed that one through for action. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, so
So the next item on the agenda is technically is a non-action, and it's an initial review for 1050 Page Mill Road. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the staff report and the attachments for that. This is a presentation by Sandhill Properties and Form 4 Architecture regarding the development at 1050 Page Mill Road and the plan to incorporate art into the development site. The 285,000 square foot development has been through preliminary architectural review board approval prior to the passage of the ordinance number 5226 requiring the incorporation of public art on site or the payment of an in lieu fee to the Public Art Fund. So in other words, normally we would have started the artwork process sooner, but because the ordinance went into effect in January, the applicants have decided to move forward with the artwork, but it is a little bit on a fast track. They have submitted their application for final review, which was attached in your packet. The applicant anticipates that they will go to the Architectural Review Board for final approval in June or July. The owner is excited about the incorporation of public art on site and has contracted with public art staff to manage the art process for them. At this time, I'm happy to introduce Bob Giannini from Form 4 Architecture, and we also have Allison Koo here from Sandhill Property Company this evening. And Bob will walk the commission through the development site, and then the commission will have the opportunity to make suggestions regarding the incorporation of art on site. And just as a reminder, as you're going through and seeing the architecture, which is really exciting for this project, Please try to keep in mind that the architecture is under the purview of the Architectural Review Board. So we try and keep that somewhat separate, although it's difficult when you have sort of sculptural architecture taking place on site. So.
Quick question before we get started, though.
Sure.
Because I see that there's a lot of sort of suggestions of things to be looked at. Is that coming from the team, or did that come from ARB?
That was the ARB application.
Yes, this is a copy of their feedback from ARB. So it's background to give you more complete information about the
Okay.
development.
Oh, okay, because you said they're going back to ARB.
For their final approval. So they went through preliminary in December, and so that packet for their final approval is addressing many of the comments that came up. Okay.
Got it.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome you both. Thank you for being here, and we're excited to hear this is our first chance to look at a Percent for Art project. So you'll have to bear with us if we're just newbies learning it all as we go.
As are
but-
we, so.
But yeah, do you have a microphone there in front of you?
Oh, I
Both of
do.
you?
Thank
Great,
you.
so we'll turn it over to you.
so much for
Thank you.
welcoming
Yeah.
us.
Good, well, you just, shall I just walk you through the project?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having us here, and we're excited too. This is a new process, so we're kind of excited to be one of the guinea pigs sort of starting. But this is a project in Stanford Research Park. Allison Koo is with Sandhill Properties, is with the owner of the project. I'm the project architect. And it's a speculative office project, although there's already a tenant on, and we know it's going to be a tech tenant. So some of the other projects we've designed on Page Mill have been more for professional offices. This will actually be a tech tenant probably in this, so it's being designed for that. And so this is the location. It's the old Facebook site.
I worked in this building. It's good you're tearing it down.
No nostalgia.
Yeah.
No, it was a terrible, it was Beckman Coulter before it was Facebook.
Right.
And it's not a very nice building, of the many buildings Facebook had.
No, it's a little heavy, and actually, when we looked at it, one of the first things we thought about was it really creates such a wall on Page Mill. And so as we developed it, as you'll see in a couple of slides here, we tried to open it up to the street. And so it actually does kind of lend itself to art, and we'll look at that in a second. So there it is. Maybe next slide. These are the images of what's there now. I think the most important thing to see in these is there's an awful lot of really large existing trees that are on the site. We're actually going to be moving about 6 big redwoods that are back on the site out onto the street because, of course, in Palo Alto, you don't cut down redwoods. You move them or you live with them. And so actually, we're saving all of the big trees. We're working very closely with the city arborist, David Doctor, to make that all work well. And you'll see as we go through the slides, one of the other things we're doing is part of the design of the project are these landforms that are going to go throughout the project, and they start at the street, and they're actually set up to frame views of the building and would be an important sort of determinant in thinking about art, I would expect. Next. And just more images of the site. Go to the next. So this is looking down on the project. So I actually brought my little pointer. So this is Page Mill, and this is Hanson Way right now, which is a signalized intersection. This is Hanover right up here. We're one building away from California. We're actually buffered. So the project is to be 4 buildings. It's roughly about 300,000 square feet. And probably the most important thing I could say getting into it is this, kind of with each project we do, we try and raise the bar a little bit. This one's trying to do 3 things that are sometimes in conflict with each other. First, it wants to be a great campus. So it has all the things that we've kind of learned about making good campuses. And actually, we're working at Facebook right now on the old campus. And the other thing is to be very sustainable. And so some of our buildings on Page Mill are net zero buildings and like that. So we're really focusing a lot on the sustainability aspect. But this time, we're also trying to do, really trying to bring the outdoors in, sort of the mid-California mid-century California modern sort of architecture. So these buildings are all glass buildings. So to do all glass buildings that are also LEED Platinum and very sustainable is kind of a big undertaking, but we're there so far and making good progress. So you can see the buildings are covered with PVs. They generate, this project generates probably about half the power it needs on site. And you'll probably see it better in upcoming pictures, but this is where these landforms sort of start on the street, and then they come back through here. All through here are bioswales and some existing oak trees we're saving, and there'll be little bridges and things that walk across the bioswales and be little one-on-one kind of spots. Then it steps more into a big sort of campus green that would be for all hands meeting and what have you, to a town center. Here, this building is set a little higher. This promenade's a little higher, so you get sort of a perch here where you look back across the campus. And this was this idea of being able to open it up to the street. So unlike the existing building, even though people aren't invited into the campus, you can see in.
Can you back up and show me where you said that was open to the street? Is it that one?
Well, it's just
there,
that
okay.
the buildings pull apart and open into it.
I see. So, and the signalized intersection would still be there, and that's still the main entrance?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay. I wasn't sure if you were referring to somewhere else.
No, that's the main entrance. We're putting one more entrance right in and a right out down at the far end that isn't there now. Okay, we go to the next. So this is the site plan, again, to orient. This is Page Mill on this side. You'll sweep in, come in through this little, and you can start to see the landforms that work here. Again, it's set up so that you look into these entries as you come through. There's water that will be introduced, and you'll see why in a minute, but what the buildings have these ribbons of aluminum that kind of fly through them, and the idea is to reflect them in the water. And I can talk why we did that, talk about why we did that. Because when we showed this to the ARB the first time, there was kind of a lot of excitement about, wow, you could even get really whimsical with this thing. We decided to do it through reflections rather than have these things flying off the building as was initially suggested. Okay, you can go to the next. This is just a street elevation. Again, it's a big site, so it's hard to see, but one of the things that'll be fairly significant here is all the existing trees, which really screen a lot of the site. Go to the next. These two images kind of are trying to capture some of what we're doing sort of theoretically about the project. On the left is sort of exploding the building apart that talks about the sustainability strategy. So the idea is a glass building with vertical glass fins that are shading the building on all sides. So those are the little glass fins pulled apart on the top. This ribbon of aluminum that shoots through the buildings and kind of links the four buildings together, so you just see the buildings kind of jumping across the spaces, and linking themselves together. And that all compresses into the building. So the ribbons, besides being this lyrical thing that goes through the buildings, are also creating the horizontal sunshades, the glass fins of the vertical sunshades. Actually, go back. The other thing I should mention is what sort of inspired the ribbon is kind of this metaphor of the evolution of innovation. So it's this notion that, you get an aspiration, the idea goes along, you might have a setback, and at the end you have success. And the way these buildings are set up is you enter the buildings through the upper ends of this success thing. So you're sort of entering through the gates of success. You're looking back toward the point of inspiration as you look back to the back building. And we could talk more about that, but we'll go on. This is getting a little bit closer and looking at the materials. So again, all glass, but to make a glass building into a LEED Platinum building, you really need to shade the building really well. You're doing that mostly for glare. And we'll talk a little bit more. We're introducing some color into that too, which we'll talk about in a second. But there are these big balconies at the ends that are created by the aluminum that shoots across the top. We're thinking of, there's two kinds of aluminum. There's the aluminum that are in the straight horizontals that's just a silver, but the ribbon of aluminum is a bluish color that's actually polarized aluminum, which changes color depending on how you look at it. The glass is all clear glass. Sometimes it's fritted glass to hide clutter along the bottom or to add a little bit extra sun shading. Go to the next. So these are a few renderings of the project. Again, from Page Mill. You never get to see much on these campus projects. They're pretty much hidden behind the trees. Move along. Next. This is looking down one of the promenades toward the back building. That's that little area of bioswale I was talking where there could be benches and people sitting and those kind of areas. The lobbies are these through lobbies. Again, the whole idea of bringing the outdoors in. Lampposts are skew. This is looking at that perch location in the back of the project across the town square, heading back toward Page Mill. The water we're using is only a couple of inches deep. It's really just there to act as reflection. And the other thing we're doing is we're introducing a little bit of color in the glass. So at the recessed side against the lobby, we're doing a different color on each of the 4 buildings to give a little orientation and differentiation. And this will be a fritted glass sort of sandwich with kind of these muted colors that we would be using. And we're still in the process of narrowing in on these colors. Another image looking across a couple of the oak trees we're saving in the center. And this image is in here to kind of represent the thinking that went into what it takes to make these things really sustainable. These are the daylighting studies. There's dozens of pages of these kind of things, but it's looking at ways to add skylights and light shelves and things like that so the buildings can use as little electricity as possible, which is the way you get to a net zero building, is you make the shell just as efficient as you possibly can, and then you can keep the mechanical equipment down, and by using natural daylighting, you can help cut the lighting, which is one of the biggest loads on the building. And that's kind of a quick overview of the project. There you go.
Great, thanks. Did you want to add anything, Allison, I guess?
I think Bob covered it, but I think that, I think the images speak for themselves. I think we're excited about this, and I think there's a cool art piece that can go along with the design that we've put a lot of thought into.
Great. So I know we'll have a good discussion here, because I think one of the ideas when we talked about this in theory, and now it's in practice, is that you would come to us and we could brainstorm, and then you all obviously have a target that you're hitting with the kind of project budget, and then we would have you just take that to its kind of fruition, and then we would get to look at it one last time, I guess, before you actually finalize. And so it's kind of a 2-step process. So I guess it won't be the last time we see you, but it's kind of the most important time for us to see you, because then you'll take it from here. So is there anything you wanted to add, Elise, I guess, prior to us opening it up for discussion?
No, it just going back to the 2-step, just to make sure everybody understands the process, because it is the first initial review. So the initial review, the intent is really for the commissioners to be able to really inspire the developers and the art team to think about different ideas that you may have regarding placement of art, types of art, any of that kind of thing, concerns you may have that we want to make sure that we address. So the second stage would be that, we take that input, we go through an art selection process, and then once we have an art plan, renderings of the artwork in situ, information about the artist, we have everything really fleshed out, then we come back to the commission for final approval. So this is really the opportunity to voice any input, concerns, enthusiasm, and inspiration you may have.
Yeah, well, I think we'll all take a turn. So Jim, are you ready to jump in and talk about it?
Can I ask a quick question about process before we start, though? Will it be sole sourced, or will it be a call model?
Because it's private development, it's up to the private developer to make the determination about that. So it can be sole source, it could be a call. My belief is in the initial discussions that we will likely be looking at a sole source.
I had one question related to the project, and then a couple just how you're thinking about art. There's a hideous parking lot. Where did all the parking go? And
Underneath.
Underneath, okay.
A little more than half the parking is underneath in garages, and maybe about 40% is on the surface.
58%.
Yeah.
Is underground.
Yeah.
And we did that specifically to create more open green space on the surface so that we could create this campus feel and have a big green in the middle.
Right, okay. And then in terms of things that are art-related, how have you thought about it, and how does the private developer stuff think about it in terms of things that are visible when you're on the campus, because if there's a central town square as opposed to things that are visible to someone that's passing by? And I'm kind of curious how you've thought about that, also given that there's a lot of trees that may obscure things that are as you're driving by or walking by. It's not an area where there's a ton of foot traffic.
Right.
And so I'm kind of curious how you've thought about it and
Right.
how the commission thinks about things in terms of, does it matter how visible it? I guess you can make it so that there's some times of the week when someone, it's open to the public to go see it, if you're leveraging that great interior space to do something really cool.
Well, the ordinance spells out pretty specifically that the artwork has to be accessible to the public 40 hours a week.
Okay.
So there's very specific language to address that. So it can't be behind a locked gate, where, where you can see it, but you can't experience the artwork. So it needs to be accessible by reasonable effort.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions too, is have you thought about initial locations? Because it seems like, aside from weekends, the only two points of visibility are the two entryways, right?
Yeah, correct. It's, for security reasons, these campuses can't be open to the public anytime. So the only really option is along the street. Just because of the way the ordinance is
Sure.
written.
Yeah.
Right.
But we do, because it is a large campus, I think that we have identified a location on Page Mill so that there's visibility on Page Mill, but for the campus itself, I think we have a lot of, again, that green space. We've thought about that being a potential area for other pieces to be incorporated throughout. So I think it'll be a mix of things that you can see driving by, but also for the enjoyment of, people as they walk through the campus. So it'll be a combination of those two ideas.
Is the campus, like, I think about different ways corporate campuses are done, and Facebook's new one in Menlo Park is kind of, there's an interior courtyard that's, you have to have a badge to get in. There's other campuses where anyone can walk. I mean, Microsoft, a lot of their campuses and eBay's, you can just walk through and it's open to the public. Is the thought here that in the interior court, that's kind of badge access only?
I think that we, right now, because the tenant,
You don't know who the tenant is.
It'll be tenant-driven, and realistically, this campus is suitable for one tenant that could take all 4 buildings and then be concerned about security and have the option of securing their site the way they would like to, or it could be open to, multiple tenants where they each take a building, and so you wouldn't actually need to do that. But it's been designed so that when you drive off of Page Mill, you go around the site itself, so it's not like currently there's no design where there's like a gate or secure entrance to the site.
You probably know, though, so we've also designed Netflix and VMware's campuses, and those campuses aren't gated or fenced, but you can't be walking around them, or, security would come, and there's no trespassing signs noted. Usually most of these kind of users don't want to make a big brother kind of deal about it and have fences or things like that, but they don't really like people, because recruiters come in and try and steal.
So
Let's sit down at the cafe.
So it sounds like there's going to be more than one work then. You're thinking that there might be several.
I think that with the size of the campus that we're working on, we're hoping that we can not just have one piece, we could spread it out amongst multiple pieces and allow for variety and also, more art to be carried throughout.
I really like your design. I think it's really beautiful, and I'm excited to see it. And I was just curious with the lighting, how that will affect the works of art. I mean, that's something. Do you have a color scheme, like in terms of the lighting, or how that will? Because it does affect how you see things.
No, good point.
It could be really cool, though, I think. So.
No, it's interesting. We're exploring that, and when we showed this to Stanford, they were at first kind of raised eyebrows, and then they got a little excited and said, well, this will be the first sort of glassy building in the park. And then they decided they really liked that idea. And then some of our renderings show this little green cast coming out of the lobby, and they interpreted that as a light effect coming out of the building, and sort of loved it, which took me by surprise. So we're kind of thinking of actually having, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but we're actually thinking of having maybe some kind of light that would come out of the lobby a little bit as it shows in the rendering. The glow from the building will be fairly subtle. There won't be a lot of spill light from the building itself. So there won't be light that probably affects the artwork. It'll probably have to be lit specifically, yeah.
And are you considering it to be like an art piece itself? I mean, or is that something?
building?
Not but the light. I mean,
Oh,
is that something?
I don't think we'll probably go there.
The architecture can't be considered part of the artwork for the ordinance. So nobody on the architecture team can be considered the artist on the project.
Right.
I think it could be cool, though, if you think about, as I think about, I don't know, we drive up and down Page Mill
Sure.
constantly,
Yeah.
and there's a good chunk of the time when it's dark.
Yeah.
And I think that you could do some really interesting things with light in the evening, different tones of light, kind of the
Right.
Terrell, we were just talking about Terrell earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, he's expensive, but that concept
Just a little bit.
could be really exciting, and it could be something that is you visualize at night, that because you're going to go by it, and if it's just a three-dimensional piece that doesn't have any light to it at all, you're not going to
Right.
capture it.
Right, right. No, it's a very good point. And I think the time is right. I think a year ago, you probably couldn't have said that on Page Mill, but now I think people are a little receptive to it.
Well, I was just saying that, and your design is beautiful, and I noticed that you have some narratives already that are coming into play: innovation, sustainability, water. Is there any thought to have you thought about a narrative for your public art yet? Will it be sort of similar, or?
We're just starting the process now, so the idea was that we wanted to take the input from the commission this evening and then use that to help inform what that plan looks like.
Okay. Well, that would definitely be my feedback, that you already have such wonderful themes and narratives, and I really like that evolution of innovation and water and sustainability. I think those are issues not just for a potential tech client there, but also for the greater community. So I think those are great places to start.
I'll jump in to say, yes, I really like the look and feel of the new project. I think it's a perfect contrast to what used to be there, the big concrete building, or what still is there, because I just drove by earlier. It's not gone yet. No, yeah, but there's plenty of construction up the road. So I was looking at, similarly, I guess I was seeing that there were already opportunities in the things that you were identifying. And so just like Vicki said, particularly playing up on the sustainability notion, and or looking at the buildings, and as you were talking about light, I couldn't help but think about light too, and not necessarily as part of the facade, but even the idea of, there are lobbies, if you had as you were just describing your rendering, I could imagine that you could have some kind of lighting that did spill out and sort of, you kind of think holographic, but it's not exactly that, but it sort of could be that, and it's open, all the time. And that doesn't necessarily have to be into the courtyard per se. It could be something that's ringing, that's more from a public point of view. So anyway, so that was one thing, the use of LED lights. Sustainability, kind of around that water. I think being that we're in a drought, that it just kind of makes me a little bit nervous.
Sure.
So maybe there's sparkly rocks instead of water, but I don't know, thinking maybe even about that element, and how that might be something else. And then I guess I was just seeing the opportunity of the landforms as you describe them. If they're, it's hard to kind of see in plan, and a little bit in your axon you can see it, but on the right-hand side when you come in, if that's elevated, and there does look to be like there could be potential gaps, I mean, that's an obvious location, and I'm sure you've probably already identified that, and, I mean, it just seems like thinking about the security and what I was unclear of is until you described it, so there's a bit of a ring road that is more of a public access, I mean, private, it's not public, it's more private to the people, but that's how I would get around to the parking structure.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So we wouldn't expect anybody except those going into the garage to necessarily be circulating on that road.
Or visitors to the campus.
Right. But that's where they're gonna be. So, so I guess I right away was sort of looking at that landform on the right. And then, of course, you named the central green, and then the town center. I mean, these are obvious places, but if you're trying to keep people to the outside, I think, doing something, well, as I said, with light maybe. So let's see, what else had I written down? I just said something to the effect of like a public garden. I mean, you're using those metaphors, and so playing off that somehow, and that sort of ties into the sustainability. There could be something integrated in that, kind of from a green. If you're able to stick around, I would invite you to, because I know Commissioner Toback has a presentation on innovations in public art in green spaces, and you have quite a bit here, and that's sort of your message, and there's some pretty neat projects, and it might inspire you as well. So I know it's your weekday evening, and you'd probably love to go home, but if you had 5 more minutes, it might be even something we could quickly move up in the agenda. And that, I think, sound, that was the last thing I said. So sound is an art form, so we've been thinking about light, sound. We're trying to do things that are, obviously two-dimensional sculpture or three-dimensional sculpture is an obvious one. Two-dimensional in the ground, three-dimensional out of the ground. Anyway, I think we can pass it along. Oh, okay.
So I also will second or third everyone that the building's wonderful. I think it's great. I like the idea of the garden, especially in the idea of the berms or the big areas. Something I was thinking, just the materials, like you talked a lot about the trees, so all these themes you went through. So woods, kind of wood type natural sculptures that you can see from Page Mill. And then the other thing I was thinking, because I just saw some on California Ave the other day, is we have some really nice benches, because you talked about the seating areas that are sculptural in themselves. So that's another aspect, and could be. Well, I don't think there's like a bus stop over there, So those might be more in, but for.
You mean like wayfinding elements just around the campus?
No, actual benches. So there are these benches on California Ave near the Mexican restaurant that had words, and the table has a poem on, something like that.
Yeah.
But that could be another. But I really liked all the themes that Commissioner Toback talked about, and so that would be my input. And then I don't think it goes with this, but I like, at Stanford when they did Y2E2, it's a LEED building, and they have, this was inside, so I don't think it counts, but you have all the information of what goes into a LEED Platinum building, sort of in a mural, and usually, like, I'm LEED certified. Like, when I worked on LEED buildings, people don't know what goes into a lot of what you do, but I think that I don't know if that's goes with the 40 hours a week or something, but taking the elements of what is sustainability in a building, and like what is all this effort you put in into that could be another idea.
That reminded me.
Yeah.
Right.
Check.
That reminded me of a project I had brought up, and it's I think the San Francisco Water District in the city. Do you know the one? It's on. It's right near the Civic Center and the City Hall, and it actually has an integrated panel of I think they look like solar collectors. Yeah. Anyway, I saw your solar looks like flat on the roof and not visible, but there is a possibility if there was some way of integrating some of that into a sculptural form somehow, that would be a little bit, I think, like what Dara's suggesting. It's like using some of those elements and sort of demonstrating some of that sustainability. Could be really cool, and that I can try to find in my notes that project. It's a great project, or forward it to you, because it was absolutely, it's a kind of a clue to that building is incredibly sustainable. It's actually creating its own power from that element, that sculptural form that's moving in the wind. So, and wind, that's another one.
Yeah, and then sort of relatedly, when you said that kind of combining all of that solar, wind, and seating are like those sunflowers in front of Country Sun where you get seating, you have umbrellas, that's part of the sculpture, it's solar, I think, you know, it moves. And so something, you know, for people to enjoy the outdoor space, sort of like, I personally like useful sculptures, as you can tell that, you know, you will actually go sit or will draw you outside out of your air conditioning and enjoy, you know, all the beautiful gardens or other sculptures you have.
And my last suggestion would just be to, and this might be, you know, more like planning, not necessarily the visuals of it, is to maybe think about it as a collection rather than just, you know, several works, because I think so many tech companies in our community already get criticism for being very inward facing. And I think the public likes to know, you know, if there's a website they can go on and just know, like, what artists are there and what's the collection. I think the Anderson collection at the Sandhill is a good example. I mean, they really, even though they also don't encourage people to come and necessarily see it, there's a website and it's treated as a whole, as a collection, and that sort of communication, I think, to the outside world of what's there and what's the thought and what tied it all together is like a really nice openness to the process.
I had one other consideration that could engage the public in sort of a fun way, and I don't think it necessarily would be that expensive. And there's at the Montparnasse train station in Paris, they had their staircase, and the staircase had a piano keyboard. And as you went up and down the stairs, people didn't know it, and they'd walk by, and as they stepped on it, and there was a little controller, and you could change: is it an organ, is it a piano?
Yeah.
And there's another thing where you could do it with light as people move around with some projectors to kind of see, is someone standing in the space, and it
Right.
knows to play the note. And it's the kind of thing that's versatile. So to the extent that you have a space that you want to make it accessible for the public that's more whimsical and playful, that could be really fun. And it's the kind of thing that may get dated after 5 years, but you could swap it out if you know that it's something that, you know, and it's the kind of thing that an artist could come back and do it, and it could be a kind of thing that would be a destination. It's like, oh, we're walking around California Avenue, let's jump around the corner to the building on Page Mill, and we could play, you know, backgammon or go up and play the musical piano on the sidewalk.
Right. No, something interactive, that'd be fun.
All right, any other comments? Otherwise, do you feel inspired? I have.
Great ideas, and I think we're excited. We're the first. I think we're the first project, so we're excited to kind of work with you guys and incorporate this and kick it off and make a great project.
Right, no, and it seems as though you already are down that path with the inspiration and the excitement that you've brought to the buildings on that road, so, great.
Excellent, thank you.
Actually, one other quick question, because I don't know the buildings. So there was a building that's immediately to the west
Right.
that they just it's just gone.
Yeah, it's one of my projects. Yeah.
Okay, so is there? I mean, one other thought is what's going to go there, and to the extent to which these things map together. I mean, the timing's a little different, but to the extent that if you're also doing the project, you might consider there's a continuum of the art from one location to the other. Just something to think about.
No, it's good. That was sort of pre.
Right, that was before the ordinance went into
okay.
effect, so that project would be exempt.
Yeah, that will be a net zero building entirely, so very different.
Anything else?
No? All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're still on the, Nadia's phone.
It's not just.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Elise. Thanks so much.
Okay. So we have a couple of other non-action items, though I also know that the speaker that we were expecting has come. So can I insert this in now? And
That's up to the chair's discretion, but if you choose to hear it, at this point, you can give her up to 3 minutes to make a public comment.
right, so that's because it is a very short nature of that sort of thing. I thought we would just insert it quickly, and then maybe we could move into the next two things, because I'm sensitive to, I wanted to see if I could keep Bob and Allison in the room in case they want to see this thing, because presentation Vicky's going to make is great. So, okay. So I guess, again, for the new commissioners, when we have a speaker, generally they come at the beginning, and then we have oral communications, and it's something that's not agendized, so it's something we're not aware of until this person comes. So we have, I'm sorry, is it Betty Kiernan?
Yes.
Betty is with us today, and she would, yep, like to, you can, oh, you've got it. Great. So you're on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Betty Kiernan, and I'm here to introduce my vision of a new project for you. And I walk around admiring things often, and thought a lot about how Palo Alto has become one of the great power cities of the world. And think about how cities like Hollywood has their avenue of the stars. And so I thought it would be absolutely amazing to have an avenue of the tech stars. But as I continued to think about it, my idea expanded, and I'm in love with the tree in front of City Hall. So imagined, along with your ecological things you're working on, is expanding that theme of a garden and approaching the major tech companies for sort of using the tree as a model, and to request that they donate some kind of, well, I wouldn't call it a transcendent symbol, but some kind of bush or flower that displays the great creativity that's around here and also incorporates the lovely garden plantings that are in Palo Alto. So in my vision, I would like to approach Apple and Facebook, Intuit, et cetera, and see if they would donate to the city an offering of a technological plant or bush that would display Palo Alto's creativity. You know, it could be a bush that gave you a positive message as you walked by, or lit up, or sparkled, or anything those brilliant minds might think of. And this would be a way of honoring the extraordinary creativity we live with, as well as bringing in the plants and the flowers in the ecological setting we're in. And if Elise allows me to present the full project, I would be happy to kind of spearhead it and contact the companies and meet with them to bring this into being. I work as a therapist in Palo Alto for 30 years. I regularly do crisis interventions in most of the companies. So I'm very used to being in those settings, and you know, the amazing artistry that I've seen in those buildings has stayed with me. So I know it's possible to come from there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Okay.
you coming. Okay, so, oops, I think, am I able to just rearrange and put number 4 and do the innovation subcommittee just quickly, and we do the retreat after, if we just switch all of 3 and 4? Is it okay to do? Not really, she's giving me faces.
Generally, we would do that at the beginning when you talk
I
about
know.
agenda changes. But, you know, I guess it's good to query if anyone's here to speak to the retreat. If there's some objection to changing it, I think it's probably fine. I don't think anyone is racing down
Since they're,
here.
right, I was gonna say, well, and since they're non-action items, and so, I mean, we could have equally had the 3 and 4 in opposite places, I'm gonna think that we're gonna be okay from a
Okay.
litigious point of view, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna switch number 3 and 4, and we're gonna start with the subcommittee reports. And so, for the new commissioners, I wanted to let you know that we do have a couple of subcommittees, and we'd love for you to think about getting involved in those, and perhaps you've heard about that from Elise. But certainly one that I know is a terrific one, because I had been on it, is innovation. But Vicki has been really the spearhead leader of this, and she's got a great presentation for us tonight. We had kind of come up with a concept about having a calendar over the course of the year where we would look at different themes on innovative public art. And so we had a couple of different ideas for the course of the year. Well, we've had more than several ideas, and we presented a few thus far. And so anyway, without further ado, I think they got it up. So let's just get you started.
Yeah, and just a little recruiting for my committee. I think I'm the only one on that committee. So, since Kathleen signed off, and it's a great one. I mean, so far, the goal of this committee is thinking about sort of innovative trends, not just in public art, but in things like, urban planning and architecture, and new technologies and new mediums and sort of new models of how these really ambitious projects are getting done. So I think last time I gave a report, it was on new media and public art. And this month, I think my ears must have been burning because we went with the green movement in public art and the environment in public art. So I'll go quickly because we usually don't. We want to save some time for discussion. And really, these presentations are sort of meant for us to just kind of get our thinking going and to talk about ways that we can think about future projects and how we want to just keep inspiration like this in our projects. So green art in public space. We're talking about sustainable design, innovation, eco-architecture, and green building. So we all know, so Palo Alto is a leader and an innovation driver in sustainability trends. I think we're seeing that in architecture. I think we're seeing that in urban planning here. And I think it's something that's really on the minds of everyone that lives and works in our community. And so I think for us as the Public Art Commission, we need to think about how we are going to incorporate that in our public projects. And the city has really undertaken a wide range of initiatives to improve sustainability in both government operations and the community at large. So I think, at the end of this, it would be great to talk about what is public art's role in all of this and how can we incorporate strategies and green processes and use green design and materials when we commission or when we look at the artists that respond to our calls and things like that. So one way that I think would be very helpful is talking about collaboration and early communication among stakeholders. I think it's something that we've talked about a lot before, that when projects come up for the Art Commission to get involved early, and I think today's presentation from the team is a great example of that, is just to even have that conversation is such a great step to get everyone thinking and collaborating early. And so later on, there aren't these complaints of, oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you look at this? Why didn't you think of this? So really something just as simple as an early conversation and communication can be great. And artists, as we all know, can also be great problem solvers for things even outside of art, in architecture and all kinds of design processes. So I think it really benefits everyone. So you can go to the next slide. So the next 3 slides are really just 3 quick examples of projects that I saw that I thought did a really good job and things like this. And they vary in budget and the kinds of communities that they're in. This one here is in Alabama. It was called Open House, and it created a new public space from an abandoned private home. The artist was Matthew Mazzotta, and it was commissioned by the Coleman Center for the Arts in the community of York, Alabama. So they took a blighted property, and they reused it and reused the materials to create a public art project in the shape of a house. And that house was then used to transform into a 100-seat open theater, which was free to the public. The next one. This is a project that they did in Budapest. It was a temporary project of a Christmas tree installation or a holiday tree. And it was put together using welding techniques that made its structure look like a giant snowflake. Carpenters created like a wooden frame, and then they brought out wooden sleds that covered the steel base. And obviously, it had to be heavy enough to withstand not falling over. And then the interior of the tree was actually open for visitors, and afterwards, they gave the sleds out to various children's charities there. So also being very green with the dismantling of their artwork and in the creation. Now, in this work called the Verdon Walk, was created for the Cleveland Public Art Park, and it sort of celebrated Cleveland's industrial heritage, which, I think they have a lot of new initiatives there from the city government for kind of greening that heritage, and they do have a new green environmental agenda citywide. So this particular project was made fabric and steel, and it speaks to the city's historical steel industry. And one of the elements was designed to be self-supporting, and the rest was installed on the ground. Metal plates were mounted onto concrete slabs, and then the hand-bent frame was requested by the project designer to enhance the organic feel. And I believe that steel was even sourced locally, recycled. So, each element required integrated solar panels to give a luminous glow to the fabric structures at night. So this, I thought, looked just really cool. And then this, I think one of my images is missing, but this I thought was excellent because these are actually two artists that we have in our collection. And this is a project that they did underneath a San Antonio overpass called Ballroom Luminoso. And it utilized steel bike parts, which were gathered from different bike co-ops around the country, and then they were manipulated to create these unique shapes and designs. And I had another photo on there of it at night. It looks like this really great nighttime chandelier that casts all this really great light. So it's really beautiful. It changes color and helps transform the mood of the space. It's this underpass, which we too have talked about transforming our underpass using light. But the design itself, I think they did a really good job. They embedded with the culture of the surrounding area, which is particularly Hispanic culture, and then the neighborhood's farming origins as well. And this was commissioned by Public Art San Antonio and the Department for Culture and Creative Development. So, and then these are just some green art organizations. Elise has these for your reference if you want them afterwards. But really places dedicated to doing this kind of art.
Thank you, that's great. And I just want to jump in to say the land art thing makes me think of the land forms, and even that is sort of Michael Heitzer, right? I mean, you right away think of things like that. So there's neat, right? I mean, there's so think differently. Obviously, I mean, it's super easy to just plunk down a piece of red steel, and we have a lot of those. So anyway, not that you were going to do that, but this is great, Vicki. So I don't mean to detract from that and speak to our audience, but anyway,
Yeah, I would have made it longer had I known this was going to be such a theme of the evening.
Well, and it also has to do with so the last month we had the Parks and Rec Department came and talked about their master plan, and of course, art in parks is a very common thing, and they are very well suited. And then, of course, we're embarking on a master plan for art for the city of Palo Alto, and we're trying to think about media and location and size and cost and all of those things as we embark on that. So clearly, that would help give our developers and owners in the room who will be, in the future, who will be jumping into these kinds of projects, ideas, so that we already have a plan, and then there will actually be some organization to how we implement. So these things are all in kind of the early stages, and it's very exciting. So you have to help us with the vision and be part of that thinking. But anyway, so it dovetailed from that, and then from this, and so it's all converging, which is all a good thing.
But I think we as commissioners, when projects come to us, Even simple questions like, the sourcing of their materials, are they recycled? Can they source from places that are recycled? Even if it's, a simple steel sculpture. Just asking those questions and getting those kinds of thoughts on the mind of the artist, would be, I think, a great role as us as a advisory body to do. Any other thoughts on the matter, or?
No, I just think
Because
they're
another
really
thing,
great.
or because vertical farming and urban farming and
Yeah.
food and the public art community is also really coming together. And I think, there's such a great potential for, especially for temporary projects, to combine those two communities. So another community that could really talk to the public art community to do those kinds of projects,
Yeah.
I think would be excellent.
We were the bike part one was really cool. It made me think. We were talking this weekend about the California Ave renovation and things that could be useful. Like I think David Byrne of the Talking Heads has a book about bike the things you lock your bikes to, bike racks, but that are really cool looking. And we're thinking, the farmers market in California Ave is well known, and so my husband's like, it could be one an apple and one's a pear and one's a and all. So you have like a functional, if that's environmental because of public transit, biking, but things that are functional could be reused material and are art, but kind of, again, not a big red metal sculpture, whatever. No. Yeah, these are great ideas.
Western Benton one on the corner that we have right there, so I have nothing against. Yeah, if anybody has any other questions or comments or discussion on this topic, this is kind of what we do. We report from our subcommittees, kind of what the thinking has been in the course of the month. This is where we can do some action outside of the committee, or outside of the monthly meetings. So we can get into topics, and that will be something further we'll talk about at our retreat that will have in June. So unless there's.
Now, is there, for the next meeting, something that will be presented from one of the subcommittees?
So each time, it's kind of a standing agenda item, and so we can always give updates. So for example, I think if Vicki, are you feeling complete?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, no, that's fine.
If someone joins the subcommittee, we'll of course collaborate.
I would be happy to join.
Okay, sounds like we have a volunteer for innovation. Great, now we have a full committee, so we're out of luck. No, there's plenty more for us to do. Okay, good, I'm gonna make a note of that. So we've got Jim and Dara.
Well, and we'll have a chance at the retreat to discuss a little bit more
Exactly.
about the other subcommittees as well and what the roles are, so that all the commissioners can choose which ones they want to get involved
Okay.
with.
Right.
Sounds good.
Although I think that they.
I retract.
No,
Just
no,
kidding.
you don't, no, it's actually fine. We've volunteered before in this kind of forum, and the truth is, well, we'll talk more, but I think you guys can safely be volunteered. So governance, I was looking at that because that is a committee that I'm on, and we don't have a report this week, so that's gonna be, or this month, that's gonna just kind of be where it is. But you've experienced some of the improvements in governance because some of the materials that were too large to be sent to us by email were on the Dropbox. The Dropbox is actually a governance improvement, so there you go. Which was terrific, because that was a huge file size, and there'd be no way to have gotten that information in advance so we could study that, so that was really helpful. Not to mention all the other materials, probably as new commissioners, you maybe were able to look at that way, so it's a good one way of pushing out information. And then our other committee is outreach, and I did speak to Amanda Beard-Ross. She said that she didn't have a report for this time, so that's fine. And then our final on ad hoc are committees that are kind of created as needed for the cases of approving like an artist selection. So for example, I'm thinking of the City Hall lobby. We have Ben, the vice chair, who is on that selection panel, and so that would be an example of an ad hoc committee. So those will come up, and then that's when we will volunteer for some of those. So that will bring us to the conclusion of discussion around subcommittee reports for now. So I'm going to back up to our other item, which was number 3 that I became number 4, and that's the retreat. So that's the segue here on that topic. So again, thank you all for being available for the June 23rd. We've got that on the calendar. And I know that's going to be an evening thing, but that seems to work. It's probably really only once a year that we'll ask for that kind of a time frame. I think we said 5 to 9. Is that right, Elise? And I think we're going to be able to provide some food for people so they don't have to eat before they come. So that'll be great. But we have really primarily 2 items, I would say, that we want to talk about in this retreat. And that is the municipal art plan, which is short form called MAP, our MAP, and it's a guide, as you would expect a map to be, that gives us what our priorities are. So it's a time for us to focus and agree upon what we think that those priorities are. And as you'll get to know me a little, I tend to be kind of a laser-focused person. I don't think we can do a lot of things in a short amount of time, so we focus on just a couple things. So the first and most important part of that municipal art plan for me will be this master art plan that we're undertaking and that we've already begun by allocating funds for. So we'll talk about, as the second item of the agenda for the retreat, really the scope of that master plan. So it really comes to us to give our input on what we think, kind of the overall scope needs to be. And what that means is, what will our consultant do in creating a master art plan? What do we want them to, how far out do we want them to go, or how narrow? And so consequently, that will determine how much money is involved, how much length of time it takes to do the scope of work that we're asking of them. So those are really the kind of 2 main agenda items. And within, just kind of backing up to that municipal art plan, the other sections of that, if you will, are kind of really mirrored to the subcommittees. So you'll see then, by getting yourself involved in 1 or 2 of those, it will start to direct what your energy will be in when you're on this commission, and how you might tackle assignments between meetings to advance some things that you might be passionate about. So I've heard some elements of passion that have already emerged today, so I imagine they'll find their way into the plan, and that's how we'll then kind of prioritize our work for the year. And it actually kind of, as much as I was really eager to have it, it's going to work well, I think, because it sort of ties to the fiscal year now, and maybe we can memorialize it to become a sort of June time frame, or late May to June, so that as we kick off into the next fiscal year, it would make some sense to kind of tie those priorities and that retreat together. So rather than, it had always been sort of calendared in the January time frame, and so we're feeling 6 months late, but indeed we'll just call this the new. So also, let's see, and looking at that, I mentioned the content, the scope, the duration, the schedule, the budget. I think those were the main things. Okay, and then I think, Elise, did you want me to table for that meeting the Parks and Rec volunteers that Peter had asked for being part of that? Is that something we'll talk about at that, or would we talk about that?
Well, we have the names of the people who are interested in participating, so we were going to pass on their contact email to Peter Jensen, so that he can make sure that the invitations get distributed to the commissioners who are interested in participating in that.
Okay, so, and did you have more than 2? So are we going to have to figure it out, or there are?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so nevertheless, it sounds like that box has been checked. It's just been in the back of my mind that we wanted to make sure we had some participation in that process, because I think that'll be a really great one, not only to demonstrate to us what we would like to do, but to get our voices in on art in the parks. So it's really a 2-way street kind of thing there. I know I'm talking a lot, but at the same time, I tend to have to drive the agenda. I'm wondering if there are other things people would like to talk about at the retreat, see happen at the retreat, topics that you were hoping to have discussed.
Well, one other thing that ties in with the municipal art plan that I wanted to mention is, as the commission discusses what the priorities are for the next year, and then has the opportunity to look at the budget. When I went through the CIP budget earlier this evening, I did talk about the items that have been voted on by the commission, but not necessarily officially encumbered. And so that would be a good time for the commission to be able to come together and look at the priorities and look at the subcommittees and determine whether or not some of those allocations, which were made some time ago, are still appropriate or not still appropriate, The retreat, because there are no action items that take place then, is not when funds would be allocated, but the commission can have a full discussion about that as it relates to the municipal art plan. And then if you decide to reallocate funds, that would take place at the next official commission meeting, public hearing.
Yeah, that's a great addition. So that's exactly where we started when we were looking at our budgets and some of those things that were future. That would be a great place for us to focus. So we will expect to send to everyone materials in advance of that, both the municipal art plan in a draft form that we would work on together. And so, having read that and being prepared, thinking about those budgets and how they tie, so we'll sort of get that packaged. And then there are several of these master art plan samples that Nadia and Elise have collected that will be great examples for us to be familiar with, again, prior to that meeting, so that we can be ready to jump into that. I guess we'll have another art commission meeting prior to that, so I could be saying this then, but at the same time, hopefully, because it will have been on a Thursday and that will be on a Monday, and I won't want to give you weekend work, then maybe we'll get it in advance, and then we'll give you a few weeks to get that ready. So that's really what the retreat is about. We've got the date, we've got the agenda, we'll get you the materials. I think it'll be a good time to get started. Okay. Any thoughts, questions? Okay. So item number 5 on our non-action is our collection review. And so this is something that we've started kind of new, I guess, really this year because of our fabulous publicly accessible web-based database of the Palo Alto Public Art Collection. And so I'm assuming everybody's pretty familiar with it just from being on the website. So I thought what we would do is actually go under discipline. And then I'm just going to randomly pick, Nia, how about you, to choose a discipline? And we're going to look at a couple of those from that. It's a good one, great one. So the idea behind this collection review is that we have a black and white copy, hard copy, printed version. Do all new commissioners now get that? Or do we not even need that? Well, of the collection. Remember how you used it? We don't need to do that anymore.
Well, no, and because we've changed the database so that it's online. So
Okay.
We've changed the system, so we're
Okay.
not doing FileMaker Pro, which is how we generated
That. Okay, I wasn't sure. So in any event, you got to, not be handed a small Bible of black and white photos of the artwork that the collection that we have for the city. So this is our new substitute, and it's a nice way to just get familiar with when the piece was accessioned and oftentimes how it came to us, and obviously who the artist is. So I see this is a new one, Nadia. Yeah. Right, so this is the most recent one that we had accessioned in a process here through this Public Art Commission just in this past year, using some public, so someone came to us with an idea, and not dissimilar from the suggestion the woman had given us earlier.
It was a percent for art. It was a municipal percent for
was?
art.
Because they were renovating
But because the bathroom didn't exist. So when
this was before my time, sorry, I
when they
shouldn't
installed
talk about
the
one.
bathroom, because a bathroom is a building and it does have a visual impact, it qualified for the municipal percent for art, but the budget was only $2,000 for the artwork. So it made sense to put out a call just for a community project. There was a Brownie troupe that responded, and we were able to find an artist to work with them to give them a framework, because you can't just give kids paintbrushes and say, here, go crazy. And they did a beautiful job. So that's the story behind that one. That was a small percent for art budget.
Right, and and so what Vicki just said is it was $2,000 percent for art. So it's not a large project, but we do have a wide range, right? That's going to be increasing over time with aggregating maybe some of the projects that are percent for art. And so we are aspiring to do larger projects, but also don't want to ignore the small ones, because this one has had great impact. Even the city council had mentioned that they had gotten some very positive feedback on that. and that, you know, it's all kinds of art, as I think, Nia, one of the things you said is it makes people happy, and I think that's an important component.
One question. So there is a piece, I'm not sure whatever happened to it, by Greg Brown, of burglars. Is it still?
They're across the street.
Is it across? Okay.
The
I haven't seen it.
rooftopers, the ones
Yes, the
coming down?
rooftopper.
It's
It
on the
is.
side of the bank right across the street
It is, okay.
on Bryant.
Yeah.
You have to
That's
look up.
that's the challenge with these things. See, I remember them in different locations, and then when they change.
There they are.
So that would be, I think, just talking about in general, the app that you're mentioning, the mobile app. I think that really would be helpful too, in saying where it used to be and where it's now. That might be a fun thing to add.
I mean, I would say clearly one of the things about, I know the concern kind of from the public art program side is that we don't have all the information kind of carried over. So some of it is in the data, right? There's the database. Do you want to speak to that, Nadia, just as far as where it is? I don't know if you.
There are some things that when we ported it over from the FileMaker Pro that did not match exactly. So we're going in and making sure that the information is correct and that it's into the proper field so that the bits that we want to have accessible to the public, that the information is there. So it is a work in progress. And you aren't incorrect. Those used to be painted on a different building. They were on the side of what used to be what is currently the Restoration Hardware building, where they also have the man pushing the stroller. The owner decided they no longer wanted the burglars on the side of that building, but they did agree to fund a replacement. So Greg Brown then repainted the mural on the side of the bank. And initially I may get this wrong. I think the initial burglars were himself and his wife, and then the second set of burglars were his children, or vice versa. I don't recall, but they're all family members.
I made that point simply because we didn't have all of the same information on this one as we had for the other, and that other one was a more recent one. So the point is that each one may or may not display the same information, but we have it in files and/or in a database that's just not matching. But it is there.
Can I ask a question about I don't know if it's appropriate now or at some point I wanted to talk about the structure of the database and how it's modified, who has access to it. Is now a good time?
Sure. Basically, Nadia goes in and amends the information on the database, so it's something that's done from staff. The city utilizes Civica, and so in order to have something on the city site that was supported by our IT department, we worked with Civica and the IT department to build this database specifically for our collection and for the needs that we have. So this just launched in, I think, late November or December. And so this is the initial shot. We are looking for interns who are maybe interested in doing some research and doing some more writing and descriptions to add into the database. And there's a little bit of photography that needs to be done. But we're looking to to buff it out a little bit more. And then there is a list of sort of in the next round of contracts with Civica of functionality that we would like to make sure gets written into it that we don't currently have.
Okay. As inspiration, there's a sort of brief, when Mark Zuckerberg was at Harvard and flunking out of an art history class, one of the things that he did was they had to memorize and sort of learn, it's like 200 pieces of art, and he created a flat file database with the image and a bunch of blank fields, who the artist was, and he just made it open to everyone that was in the class. And Wikipedia style, the thing filled up, and he passed the class, and most of the folks passed the class. And I'm wondering, and maybe it's something to table and talk at a just one-on-one, but to me, this is something that makes a ton of sense to open up to when it's ready. I don't know at what phase, but at some point make it open to the community so that it's mapped and you could comment and like, and that you could have the artist come, and it'd be the kind of thing where you could keep control of it, and so someone that's on staff could approve the input, but to the extent that it could lighten the burden and enrich the data that's there by opening it up. Like the story that you just told about the previous piece is really interesting, and people would want to know. I'm also curious about how you think about what goes there that may be potentially controversial, like this was funded by X and it cost this much. Is that something that is there an interest in having that be public from an accountability standpoint, or is it, I don't know how the commission has thought and staff has thought about that, but I'm kind of curious.
Generally, we don't put the prices of artworks on there, and some of that is the collection began in the early 70s, and so there are some pieces that we do not have current values on, and that's something we're looking at doing, having the whole thing appraised. But from a security standpoint, you also want to be sensitive to the fact of, putting the price of an artwork and a picture and a location can make it pretty appealing. So, and also there are other reasons for the artist's interest to not publish that information. So there are some things that, because the database has a dual purpose. So staff goes in and we are able to put information in that database, such as the last time it was treated, exactly what paint and materials are on it. So we keep all of our internal records on that same database, but only certain fields are visible to the public.
So I was going to ask you to just go back and hit a couple more in the murals, because it's one that I have not actually gone into. So I think that was fortuitous, Nia, that you selected that. So for example, I was thinking to look at the boy with the fishing pole. That's also Greg Brown. I guess we have quite a few of those. Maybe that's not such a good example. But maybe a good one, because when and if the post office is sold, which is in the process of it, it's something that the process around preserving that is one that we've encountered before, right? Where we actually have to approach the new building owner and ask them to preserve something. Do you want to speak a little more to that, Elise?
It really is case by case, depending on the contract. But just helping the building owners understand that the artists have certain rights, and if they choose to paint over it, that they would need to come to the commission to deaccession the artwork, and that it is a real loss to the collection, and that the artist may, in fact, decide to take some sort of legal action, so that they need to be aware of the artist's rights.
Okay, and this is one, yes, that we see on California Avenue. It's been mentioned a few times. Dara, I think you must frequent California Avenue. Do you recognize this one? It's a test for you. It is, exactly.
Bucks ones.
Right.
That one too.
And so these are just adjacent to one another on that same wall.
What is the history of all of those that are together? Were they all put in together?
I'm trying to remember. I think one of them was commissioned at a different time, and then two of them were commissioned about the same time. And we can probably just look at the dates.
This is the earliest, this is the
Oh.
first mural,
The
and
Christian
sort of
ones.
the other two inspired, were inspired conceptually by the first one, so they
Okay.
spun off conceptually the first one. But it's three separate artists
Mm-hmm.
who are presented on the same walls. It's a great side-by-side collection of murals.
But many of those artworks all up and down California Avenue were funded in a partnership between the Palo Alto Public Art Commission and what was then known as CADA, which was the California Avenue Business District. So there was a real desire at that time to create this avenue of the art. So many of those pieces were funded jointly.
And then I was thinking, if you go back one, Nadia, just this maybe it appeared that maybe one of the utility boxes was there. Yeah, sure enough. And Dara, since you had mentioned this and was something that I think you were interested in, this is a process that has happened here in Palo Alto before. And we had a presentation 2 months ago from the city of San Jose from someone who had run a program like this. And so certainly it is one of these maybe easier to penetrate or sometimes not, but nevertheless, it's something that it's come up and it seems to be topical again. So I wanted to let people know. You probably know that there's one directly across the street from City Hall here, right outside the planning department, and then obviously a few more around town.
I think
Perfect. That's the one that's right, yep, directly across the street. Yeah. Okay, well, I gave myself till 7:45 on this, and I'm a couple minutes over, so I think that that's probably good for tonight's review of the collection. I feel like a little bit like Mr. Rogers or something. So announcements is the next thing. Elise, did you have any announcements? I don't think we had any particularly.
No, Art Market kicks off tonight. I don't know who might be going up to San Francisco. I think Commissioner Toback's heading up. I'm going tomorrow, but it's a really fun way to get a good snapshot of what's going on with the gallery scene. So I encourage you all to go if you have a chance. If you need free passes, let me know.
And then the next one is for your calendar, and so that's our next meeting, which is currently June 19th. Here, the same place, same time, 7 p.m. rather, because tonight we started a little bit early in the effort to try to get our calendars freed for those who might want to go to the art market. And then we'll have the retreat on the 23rd, which we didn't know about, I think, when we had issued this agenda. So the 23rd from 5 till 9, and that will be here? We don't know.
Still to be determined.
Okay.
We'll let you know.
Yeah, exactly. We have time on that. So with that, I will bring to closure our meeting. So thank you all.